Hey everyone, welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I am your host, Jim Chapman, and today I am going to bring you a case that is growing as we speak in the state of Kentucky. But the law that I'm going to talk about today and the law this teacher is charged with is really a new law in many parts of the country, including my state of Louisiana, and that is the new grooming law. So before we get into the very first arrest to take place when this grooming law went into effect in the state of Kentucky, and wouldn't you know it, it was a teacher, which I love teachers, y'all, so don't come at me if you're a teacher, because all of the good teachers that I know want me exposing these bad teachers. No one hates a bad teacher more than a good teacher, because they throw shade on the entire profession when they do stupid stuff like I'm going to tell you about today. Now, before we get into it, I want to break down what grooming is, specifically in the state of Kentucky, because that is where this case is being prosecuted, but the definition can really apply to just about any state. So Kentucky's grooming law, codified as KRS 510.160, that is grooming a minor. It was created by House Bill number 4 of the 2026 regular session in Kentucky, and it took effect just a few weeks ago from this recording, July 15th of 2026. So the gist of this law is a person is guilty of grooming a minor when A, being 18 years of age or older, he or she engages in grooming behavior directed at a minor who is under 14 years old with the intent to entice, coerce, solicit, or induce a minor to engage in sexual conduct with the person or another person, or, and it goes into section B, being a person of authority or position of special trust, as those terms are defined. He or she engages in grooming behavior directed at a minor who is under 18 with the intent to, 1, entice, coerce, solicit, or induce the minor into sexual conduct with the person or another person, or 2, develop an intimate or secretive relationship with the minor. And that number 2 is going to create issue for our subject for today. Now it goes on to say, for violation of subsection 1A, grooming a minor is a Class A misdemeanor unless the minor is under 12 years old, in which case it is a Class D felony. So a misdemeanor 12 years and older, a felony under the age of 12. Then subsection B says, for a violation of subsection 1 of this section, grooming a minor is a Class D felony unless the minor is under 12, in which case it's a Class C felony. Any sentence imposed on the defendant under this section shall run concurrently with any sentence imposed for an offense specified in this chapter arising from the same course of conduct with the same victim. This section shall not be construed to prevent a person from communicating with a minor for any lawful or legitimate purpose, including but not limited to teaching curriculum on human sexuality or STDs, as provided, and it gives the section code. The use of traceable communication systems by a school district employee or volunteer, the diagnosis or treatment of a minor by a healthcare provider in a healthcare facility, communicating with a minor to determine if the minor is dependent, neglected, or abused, age-appropriate conversations about puberty or human sexuality with a minor by the minor's sibling or parent or guardian, and then any conversation with a minor that is part of a person's job-related or volunteer-related duties, effective July 15th of 2026. Now, the key related definition from all of that means grooming behavior is a course of conduct directed at a minor that is intended to establish an emotional connection with a minor through manipulation, trust building, or influence to A, facilitate future acts of sexual conduct, or B, normalize or desensitize the minor to acts of sexual conduct, even in no in-person meeting or act of sexual conduct is completed. This conduct may occur online or in person through third parties or by any other indirect methods to facilitate the manipulation of a minor. So that law went into effect in Kentucky, as I said, on July 15th. And just 3 weeks later, on August 7th of 2026, the state made the very first arrest under this law, arresting 25-year-old middle school teacher Sadie Flores. Now, what did she do? How did police discover it? And what type of sentence is she possibly facing? That's what we're going to cover today, so let's get into it. And 25-year-old Sadie Flores was a teacher at Graves County Middle School, and this is in Mayfield, Kentucky, which is a smaller city in Kentucky, just 10,000 residents, and it's less than 7 square miles in size. Now, in 2021, a major disaster hit the city of Mayfield, and you may be like, man, I thought I've heard of Mayfield, Kentucky before, and this may be where you heard it. It was Sadie's hometown and where she herself was a volleyball star. Now, Sadie was 19 when an EF4 tornado ripped through that city. This was on the night of December 10th of 2021, and it was horrific, y'all. Over 4,000 structures were damaged or completely destroyed in that city, including nearly 3,800 residences and 183 commercial buildings. Just decimated this town. And sadly, 22 people in this small city were killed and 2 more in a neighboring city. Now, why do I bring that up? Because Sadie was very active on Facebook with pictures of the devastation from this horrific event, requests for prayers, all those sorts of things. And she was really dedicated to this city from everything really that I can see and find. Now, Sadie gets married on June 3rd of 2022 to her high school sweetheart. She was active in her church, and her wedding pictures, they would depict a handsome groom and a stunningly beautiful young lady. She is really attractive here. I mean, all appearances seems to be living the good life, right? She's got a handsome husband. She's starting out in her work world and in her career. And in 2023, she graduates college. Now, she has a young daughter in early 2025. And look, it's obvious that Sadie was really proud to become a teacher. Believe it or not, her Facebook is still up. And I was able to kind of go through there, and you can tell, very proud to become a teacher, very proud of her family. Seems like just your normal, everyday, awesome person on the outside. Now, she is an LBD teacher at Graves County Middle School, which I had no clue what that was. So I looked it up, and an LBD teacher is basically the same as a special education teacher. They teach students from kindergarten through high school who have specific learning disabilities, minor intellectual disabilities, emotional and behavior disorders, or ADHD. Now, the most vulnerable students are who she taught, and it's not clear if what I'm about to tell you about was an LBD student or a regular student. Nothing's came out on that, but it's worth mentioning what she did, because if nothing else, it shows that she worked with these kids who were very vulnerable. Now, you see all that, you couple it with what appears to be a growing family, and you have to think, wow, this girl is on track. So what happened here? Well, a charging document comes out from police, and the local sheriff says that police first learned that Flores was having what he called an improper relationship with a student through the school district, who called to get police involved. Deputies, of course, they investigate this. They seize electronics, cell phones. They conduct interviews with people, including Flores. And at that time, whatever was said in that interview caused them to place her under arrest. In that uniform citation that came out, it went further, saying the parent of a 14-year-old student went through the 14-year-old's phone and apparently found messages between Flores and this student. And I can't say how key that is for any parent. Get in your kid's business. And you're going to learn why that's so important later on. But go through the phone, be sneaky, do whatever you have to do. There are too many ways for bad actors to contact your children these days. Now, investigators say the messages upon review were determined to not be a legitimate purpose and were not school related, meaning the messages weren't anything to do with innocence, right? The parent also identified multiple incoming phone calls that were identified as FaceTime calls that occurred on multiple occasions in the late evening hours that mom and dad had no idea about. So this teacher is FaceTiming this student late at night when everybody else is asleep, allegedly. The document goes on to say during the investigation, the police discovered communication on multiple social media apps, which I would assume, y'all, was private messages, and that these messages appeared to be attempts to manipulate this 14-year-old, and that the messages did express feelings of love and admiration more so than just a teacher-student relationship. That's how they laid that out. Nothing as far as concrete text have come out as of this recording. It was also determined that Flores and the student met in secret prior to a school function outside of school for the specific purpose of meeting, which means Flores was not part of the school function that was going on, but she lived in close proximity to the event and goes and meets this 14-year-old in secret, in person. Now, that investigation, it goes on to say, is ongoing, pending Snapchat and Instagram records, meaning more charges may be coming. And I don't know one way or the other, but I would suspect there's probably going to be more charges laid down once they get the records of the Snapchat and Instagram chats. Now, Flores is being charged with a Class D felony aspect of that new grooming law specifically, and that is grooming of a minor by a person in a position of authority by developing a secretive relationship with the minor. So keeping all that a secret actually moved her shit up from a misdemeanor to a felony. So let's go over the position of authority section of this law again, using the specific section she was charged with. It reads, being a person in a position of authority or special trust engaging in grooming behavior with a minor under the age of 18 by attempting to entice, coerce, solicit, or induce the minor to engage in sexual activity. So there's probably some evidence there that the police have you could derive by the charges that not only was she talking inappropriately to him, she was trying to induce him into sexual activity, which it's important to mention. Just a month ago, the attempt was not necessarily illegal. It certainly could get you fired if you were a teacher, but you couldn't technically get arrested for a felony for just, say, asking a student to have sex. Now you can. Now, they may discover this relationship went a little bit further than just talking, and I have my suspicions, but no evidence has come out yet. But if it does, you can rest assured those charges will go up. Now, as it stands, her Class D felony comes with a 1 to 5 year possible prison sentence and a $10,000 fine if she had no sexual conduct or contact with this student. 1 to 5 years obviously goes up from there if they find out pictures were exchanged, nude pictures, or sex was being had, those sorts of things. Now, surprisingly, at least of this recording, as I said, her Facebook page is still up. As a matter of fact, you can see her just 4 days prior to this arrest at a church function with her husband and her child, just living a blessed life. So after the arrest, the school comes out and they essentially say they were made aware that mom found all this communication and that they immediately made the police aware. And that's a good thing because that is exactly what they should have done. No attempted cover up that you see sometimes with these schools where they're worried about getting shade thrown on them or the blame being thrown on them. And some schools districts do try to hide it and cover it up. They didn't in this case. They called the police right off the bat. Now, you may wonder what led Kentucky to enacting this grooming law. And one of the cases that actually led to it involved a band director at a high school in Kentucky who used grooming to the extreme. Over a year of grooming before sexually assaulting a student. I'll tell you about that in just a few minutes. Now, currently, if you're curious, 18 states criminalize grooming. So I would for sure advise to see if your state, like mine in Louisiana and in Kentucky, have grooming laws to make it a criminal act. And that's important. If not, you need to lobby your legislators, y'all. That is what they're there for. So Sadie Flores' arraignment is set for September. Obviously, she is no longer employed with the school district, and I, of course, will keep you updated. But I went ahead and I mentioned the music director case above as the specific case that sparked Kentucky to look into this new grooming law. So I figured, why not cover that with you as well so you have a full picture? Because that's really all we have on Sadie Flores' case as of this point. So I'll just tell it to you quickly. In 2021, the Anderson County High School Marching Band, they won a 4A state championship, and the director was a longtime teacher named Patrick Howard Brady. Now, he had been at the school for more than a decade. Parents trusted him. Students looked up to him, and he had the authority that comes with being a person who runs a band program. Now, less than 2 years later, that same man was sitting in a federal courtroom in Lexington facing a maximum of 30 years in prison. So what happened? Well, while he was still the band director, he was using text messages, FaceTime, and a photography app called VSCO. And I know most of y'all are familiar with that. He used that to groom one of his underage female students into a sexual relationship. They had sex inside the high school multiple times. He would direct her how to pose on live video calls. And there were more than 20, incidentally, of these live video calls. And when police started investigating, he deleted the app. So he's attempting to hide it at that point, right? A little bit about him. He was born in 1986, and by the time of these crimes, he was living in the Springfield area of Kentucky. He would join the Anderson County school system in 2009, and for more than 10 years, he taught and served as the high school band director. And under his leadership, the marching band achieved major success, including a 2021 4A state championship for bands. That's a huge deal. And in a small community like Anderson County, the band director, pretty prominent figure, has unique access to students. He sees these kids almost every day for after-school rehearsals, weekend competitions, travel, you name it. Parents hand their children over to him for long hours, and students, they often form close, almost like familial bonds with a good band director. Brady had that position of trust and authority, and he used it for evil. So the victim in this case was a female student born in 2006. She was a freshman in the band during that 2021-22 school year. And according to Brady's own defense sentencing memorandum, the next school year, she broke up with her boyfriend, and she starts hanging around Brady's office before and after school, and that's when the private communication started. This young, impressionable lady's got her heart broke. She broke up with her boyfriend, and he is grooming her at this point. He's going to be the shoulder to cry on, right? Summer of 2022, text messages, phone calls, FaceTimes, they all start flying. And Brady later admitted in his federal plea agreement that he used text messaging, FaceTime, and that VSCO social media photography app, which is one you wouldn't think of, right? So write that down. Maybe that's something, if you find that app on your child's phone, you need to look into it because you can message from that app. But he mentioned that he was using these to, quote, groom this student for a romantic sexual relationship. And that's important. Grooming were his words. He would continue to groom his way into the relationship, and he would groom this student into building an emotional dependence on him first. So he took all the time he needed to get her to trust him emotionally, and then he exploited it, and then he sexualized it. So according to the plea agreement, these sexually explicit FaceTime calls happened 1 to 4 times per week, more than 20 times in total. And Brady told the victim how to pose in these calls. These were not still images he was collecting, y'all. Not that that's any better. These were live video sessions between a 36-year-old band director and one of his underage students. But it didn't stay digital. Brady and the victim would then engage in in-person sexual acts on multiple occasions. Several of those acts happened inside the Anderson County High School, and the overall window of this sexual contact ran from roughly the spring of 2022 into the spring of 2023, maybe a little beyond. So almost a full year, if not a full year, while he was still the band director at that school. Then on May 12th of 2023, law enforcement, they receive a complaint. The Anderson County Sheriff's Office and Kentucky State Police, they open an investigation. The victim provided a statement. Brady finds out about this and he deletes that VSCO application from his phone. And 3 days later, on May 15th of 2023, Anderson County Schools suspend him. He would later be fired on August 4th of 2023. Now, in July of 2023, he was formally charged and indicted by an Anderson County grand jury on 11 state counts. 4 counts of first-degree unlawful transaction with a minor, promoting a sexual performance by a minor, third-degree rape, 2 counts of third-degree sodomy, which, incidentally, a lot of people ask me, is sodomy just anal sex? It's not. Oral sex is also considered sodomy, just FYI. He was also charged with first-degree sexual abuse, unlawful use of electronic means to induce a minor, and tampering with physical evidence. He gets held on a $100,000 bond, and federal charges followed in December of 2023, which included online enticement, receipt of child pornography material, and production of a visual depiction of a minor engaged in sexually explicit conduct. So she was posing for him apparently nude, and it looks like they may have had some pornographic material between each other that was found on these electronics. Now, in April of 2024, Brady pleaded in both cases. Federally, he pleaded to guilty to 1 count of production of a visual depiction of a minor engaged in sexually explicit conduct. The other 2 federal counts were dismissed. And in state court, he pleaded guilty to the package of 11 counts, and the state recommended 15 years with parole. Then the federal sentencing, it would come on August 22nd of 2024, and he received 25 years for that in federal prison with a $5,000 fine and lifetime supervised release. Now, under federal law, he must serve at least 85% of that sentence. There is no parole. He can't be in jail for 4 years and then go and ask for parole. He can't get parole before 85% of that sentence, and it's not considered parole. Well, what he'll get is a little bit of good time. Brady appealed, of course, all of these convictions, and especially the reasonableness of the 25-year sentence, which I find it very reasonable. And in May 2025, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeal, they affirmed it and said, nope, very reasonable. So the implications of this case went much further with the passage of that grooming law in Kentucky. It led to that passage. So there was some good to come out of that in the long term because it forced states to look at the seriousness of grooming. Now, you may be curious, what states already have criminal grooming laws? Well, I looked that up so you don't have to, and I'm going to tell you about them. Arkansas, if you're in the state of Arkansas, you have grooming laws that are considered criminal grooming laws. They were updated in 2025, so they're pretty recent. Illinois criminalizes electronic and luring grooming actions. Texas and Nevada, they passed standalone criminalization acts in 2023. So they're a little bit outdated, possibly. So people may want to look at those and see if they need to be updated somewhat, because obviously technology changes. Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Iowa, Vermont, and Wisconsin, y'all are all doing good. Passed or strengthened laws through 2024 to 2026, with Wisconsin focusing heavily on authority figures in general adult prosecution. So they're taking it very serious. Good for them. Ohio, Montana, Mississippi, and Louisiana added felony grooming statutes in 2025. In Wyoming, Missouri, Kentucky, and Minnesota passed and enacted anti-grooming legislation in 2026. So I want to say this, very important. If you did not hear your state, y'all, lobby your legislators. Very important these grooming laws get on the books. This is exactly how these predators are starting to get to your children. No reason every single state should not have felony grooming laws on their books. If they don't, be a loud voice, get out there and ask your legislators why. So there you have that. Now, a couple of other things that I want to talk about quickly. Nolan Wells, of course, I've done several episodes on that case. Just a quick update. Not much has come out since the last episode, but it was interesting. The attorney for three of the young men who have been under fire, if you will, over this case. Well, he has disclosed that the family of Nolan Wells has never turned over Nolan's cell phone for police to even look at it and download the material, which, if you're interested in getting to the bottom of this case, why would you withhold that? Now, Nolan Wells' family attorneys, they responded to that by saying, quote, Nolan's family has not refused to cooperate, and the correspondence with the DA's office is proof of that. We agreed on July 15th to examine this phone together with their experts, our experts, and possibly the FBI. We have continued to expect that the forensic examination of Nolan's phone would happen exactly as agreed on July 15th in order to preserve the evidence. We asked for a protocol, a chain of custody, an agreement on what happens to the data. We have yet to receive these details. So, I struggle to understand why they're throwing up their own roadblocks out there. I'm not going to speculate on why. I don't know why. It seems like anything that would help the police get to the bottom of this case, you would be willing to do right off the bat. It's obvious that they're saying we don't trust the investigators in this case. We don't trust the district attorney in this case. So if you're going to look through his phone, we want to make sure we have representatives there to do it. I don't know where that mistrust comes from, honestly, but okay. But until you turn over that phone and you allow police to look at it, maybe there's something on there that can blow this case open. We just don't know. Why would you withhold that? I just can't make sense of it. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. And that's all that really has been updated on the Nolan Wells case as of now. Of course, I will keep you updated as new things come out. I want to take a minute and thank everyone for listening, sharing the podcast. We don't grow without the shares. So if you see me post something on Facebook in relation to this podcast and you share it, that's one way you can help support the show. Another way is to check out the Patreon, commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, and all kinds of other benefits on the Patreon. You can go there and check it out, patreon.com/exposedpodcastfiles. Without these people's support, I could not do this show. Also, if you're interested, 30% off Cozy Earth. You go to cozyearth.com, Bamboo bedding, bamboo pajama sets, softest material in the world, y'all. It is cooling fabric in what is the hottest summer that I have ever seen here in South Louisiana. And from what I understand, all over the country, this stuff is like you're laying on your air conditioner. It feels that good. Very well-made sheet sets, comforter sets, and all kinds of other things. They've even got bamboo bath towels. But if you're a listener of this show, 30% off just for listening to Exposed. It's a huge deal. CozyEarth.com and use Exposed at checkout to save 30%. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.